lunch? I can feel the heat closing in. Feel them out there making their moves, setting up their devil doll stool pigeons, crooning over my spoon and dropper I throw away in Washington Square Station. Fall to turnstile and 2 flights down the iron stairs, catching up down A train. Young, good-looking crew cut, Ivy League advertising exec type fruit holds the door back for me. I'm evidently his idea of a character. You know the type comes on with bartenders and cab drivers talking about right hooks and the Dodgers. Call the counterman in Needix by his first name. A real soul. And right on time, this narcotic stick in a white trench coat. Imagine tailing somebody in a white trench coat, trying to pass as a fag, I guess, hit the platform. I can hear the way he would say it, holding my outfit in his left hand, right hand on his piece. I think you dropped something, fella. But the subway is moving. So long, Flatfoot, I yelled, giving the fruit his B production. I look into the fruit's eyes, take in the white teeth, the Florida tan, the $200 shark skin suit, the button-down Brooks Brothers shirt, and carrying the news as a prop. The only thing I read is Little Abner. A square wants to come on hip, talks about pod, smoke it now and then, and keeps some around to offer the fast Hollywood types. Thanks, kid, I say. I can see you're one of our own. His face lights up like a pinball machine with stupid pink affect. You ever see a hot shot hit, kid? I saw the Gimp catch one in Philly. We rigged his room with a one-way whorehouse mirror and charged Osowski to watch it. He never got the needle out of his arm. They don't if the shot is right. That's the way they find them, dropper full of clotted blood, hanging out of a blue arm. The look in his eyes when it hit kid, it was tasty. Recollect when I'm traveling with a vigilante, best shake man in the industry, out in Chi. We was working the fags in Lincoln Park. So one night the vigilante turns up for work in cowboy boots and a black vest with a hunk of tin on it and a lariat slung over his shoulder. So I says, "What's with you? You wig already?" He just looks at me and says, "Fill your hand, stranger," and hauls out an old rusty 6-shooter. Yet I take off across Lincoln Park, bullets cutting all around me. And he hangs 3 fags before the fuzz nails him. I mean, the vigilante earned his moniker. Ever notice how many expressions carry over from queers to con men? Like, raised. Letting someone know you're in the same line. The shoe store kid, he got his moniker shaken down fetishists in shoe stores, says, give it to a mark with KY and he will come back moaning for more. And when the kid spots a mark, he begins to breathe heavy. His face swells and his lips turn purple like an Eskimo in heat. Then slow, he comes on the mark, feeling for him, palpating him with fingers of rotten ectoplasm. The Rube has this sincere little boy look. Burns through him like blue neon. That one stepped right off a Saturday Evening Post cover with a string of bullheads and preserved himself in junk. His marks never beef, and the bunco people are really carrying a needle for the Rube. One day, little boy Blue starts to slip, and what crows out would make an ambulance attendant puke. The Rube flips in the end, running through empty automats and subway stations, screaming, come back, kid, come back! And follows his boy right into the East River, down through condoms and orange peels, mosaic of floating newspapers, down into the silent black ooze with gangsters in concrete and pistols pounded flat to avoid the probing finger of prurient ballistic experts. And the fruit is thinking, what a character. Wait till I tell the boys in Clark's about this one. He's a character collector. Would stand still for Joe Gould's Seagull Act. So they put it on him for a Sosky and make him eat to sell him some pot, as he calls it, thinking I'll catnip the jerk. Well, I said, tapping my arm, duty calls. As one judge said to another, be just. If you can't be just, be arbitrary. I cut into the automat, and there's Bill Gaines, huddled in someone else's overcoat, looking like a 1910 banker with paresis. And old Bart, shabby and inconspicuous, dunking pound cake with his dirty fingers shiny over the dirt. I had some uptown customers Bill took care of, and Bart knew a few old relics from hop smoking times. Spectral janitors gray as ashes, phantom porters sweeping out dingy halls with a slow old man's hand, coughing and spitting in the junk-sick dawn. Retired asthmatic fences in theatrical hotels. Pent upon Rose, the old madam from Peoria. Stoical Chinese waiters never show sickness. Bart sought them out with his old junkie walk, patient and cautious and slow. Dropped into their bloodless hands a few hours of warmth. I made the ride with him once for kicks. You know how old people lose all shame about eating and it makes you puke to wash them? Old junkies the same about junk. They gibber and squeal at sight of it. The spit hangs off their chins and their stomachs rumble, and all their guts grind in peristalsis while they cook up. dissolving the body's decent skin. You expect any moment a great blob of protoplasm will plop right out and surround the junk. It really disgusts you to see it. Well, my boys will be like that one day, I thought philosophically. Isn't life peculiar? So back downtown by the Sheridan Square station, in case the dick is lurking in the broom closet. Well, the fuzz has my spoon and dropper, and I know they're coming in on my frequency, led by this blind pigeon known as Willie the Disc. Willie has a round disc mouth lined with sensitive erectile black hairs. He is blind from shooting in the eyeball, his nose and palate eaten away, sniffing H. His body a mass of scar tissue, hard and dry as wood. He can only eat the shit now with that mouth. Sometimes sways on a long tube of ectoplasm, feeling for the silent frequency of junk. He follows my trail all over the city into rooms I move out already, and the fuzz walks in on some newlyweds from Sioux Falls. All right, Lee, come out from behind that strap-on. We know you, and pulls the man's prick off straight away. Now Willie's getting hot. You can hear him always out there in darkness. He only functions at night, whimpering, and feel the terrible urgency of that blind, seeking mouth. When they move into the bust, Willie goes all out of control, and his mouth eats a hole right through the door. If the cops weren't there to restrain him, with a stock probe he would suck the juice right out of every junkie he ran down. I knew, and everybody else knew, they had the disc on me. And if my kid customers ever hit the stand, he forced me to commit all kind of awful sex acts in return for junk. I knew I could kiss the street goodbye. So we stock up on H, buy a second-hand Studebaker, and head west. The Rube is a social liability with his attacks, as he calls them. The mark inside was coming up on him, and that's a rumble nobody can cool. Outside Philly jumps out to con a prowl car, and the fuzz takes one look at his face and busts all of us. The Rube's attacks become a habitual condition. Cops, doormen, dog secretaries snarl at his approach. The blonde god has fallen to untouchable vileness. Con men don't change. They break. They shatter. Explosions of matter in cold interstellar space drift away in cosmic dust, leave the empty body behind. Hustlers of the world, there is one mark you cannot beat, the mark inside. I left the Rube standing on a corner, red brick slums to the sky under a steady rain of soot. Gonna hit this croaker I know, right back with that good pure drugstore M. No, you wait here. Don't want him to rumble you no matter how long, Rube. Wait for me, right on this corner. Goodbye, Rube. Goodbye, kid. Where do they go when they walk out and leave the body behind? Chicago, invisible hierarchy of decorticated wops. Smell of atrophied gangsters. Earthbound ghost hit you at North and Halsted. Cicero, Lincoln Park. Panhandler of dreams. Past invading the present. Rancid magic of slot machines and roadhouses. Into the interior. A vast subdivision antennae of television to the meaningless sky. In life-proof houses, they hover over the young, sop up a little of what they shut out. Oh, to the young, bring anything in, and they are not young very long. Illinois and Missouri, miasma of mound-building peoples, groveling worship of the food source, cruel and ugly festivals, dead-end horror of the centipede god. It reaches from Moundville to the lunar deserts of coastal Peru. America is not a young land. It is old and dirty and evil. Before the settlers, before the Indians, the evil is there waiting. And always cops, smooth college trained state cops, practiced apologetic patter. Electronic eyes weigh your car and luggage, clothes and face. Snarling big city dicks, soft-spoken country sheriffs with something black and menacing in old eyes, color of a faded gray flannel shirt. And always car trouble. In St. Louis, traded the 1942 Studebaker in. It has a built-in engineering flaw like the room. On an old Packard limousine, heated up and barely made Kansas City and bought a Ford. Turned out to be an oil burner. Packed it in on a Jeep. We pushed too hard. They are no good for highway driving and burned something out inside and rattling around. Went back to the old Ford V8. Can't beat that engine for getting there, oil burner or no. And the U.S. drag closes around us like no other drag in the world. Worse than the Andes, high mountain towns, cold wind down from postcard mountains. Thin air like death in the throat. River towns of Ecuador. Malaria gray as junk under black Stetsons, muzzle-loading shotguns, vultures pecking through the mud streets. And what hits you when you get off the Malmo ferry in Sweden is no juice tax on the ferry. It knocks all that cheap tax-free juice right out of you and brings you all the way down. Averted eyes in the cemetery in the middle of town. Every town in Sweden seems to be built around a cemetery. And nothing to do in the afternoon, not a bar, not a movie. And I blasted my last stick of Tangier tea and I said, K.E., let's get right back on that ferry. But there is no drag like U.S. drag. You can't see it. You don't know where it comes from. Take one of these cocktail lounges at the end of a subdivision street. Every block of houses has its own bar and drugstore and market and liquor store. You walk in and it hits you, but where does it come from? Not the bartender, not the customers, nor the cream-colored plastic rounding the bar stools, nor the dim neon, not even the TV. And our habits build up with a drag like cocaine will build you up staying ahead of the sea bring down. And the junk was running low. So there we are in this no-horse town strictly from cough syrup, and bumming it up to syrup, and drove on, cold spring wind whistling through that old heap around our shivering, junk-sick bodies. And the cold you always come down with when the junk runs out of you. On through the peeled landscape, dead armadillos in the road and vultures over the swamp and cypress stumps. Motels with beaver-board walls, gas heaters, thin pink blankets. Itinerant short con and carny hype men have burned down the croakers of Texas. Day of the Dead. I got the chucks and ate my little Willie's sugar skull. He cried and I had to go out for another. Walked past the cocktail lounge where they blasted the High Life bookie. In Cuernavaca, or was it Tasco, Jane meets a pimp trombone player and disappears in a cloud of tea smoke. The pimp is one of those vibration and dietary artists, which is a means he degrades the female sex by forcing his chicks to swallow all this shit. He was continually enlarging his theories. He would quiz a chick and threaten to walk out if she hadn't memorized every nuance of his latest assault on logic and the human image. Now, baby, I got it here to give, but if you won't receive it, there's just nothing I can do. He was a ritual tea smoker and very puritanical about junk, the way some tea heads are. He claimed tea put him in touch with supra-blue gravitational fields. He had ideas on every subject. What kind of underwear was healthy, when to drink water, and how to wipe your ass. He had a shiny red face and a great spreading smooth nose. Little red eyes that lit up when he looked at a chick and went out when he looked at anything else. His shoulders were very broad and suggested deformity. So he was putting down junk and coming on with tea. I take 3 drags. Jane looked at him, and her flesh crystallized. I leaped up, screaming, "I got the fear," and ran out of the house. Drank a beer in a little restaurant, mosaic bar, and soccer scores and bullfight posters, and waited for the bus to town. A year later in Tangier, I heard she was dead. Benway. So I'm assigned to engage the services of Dr. Benway for Islam Inc. Benway is a manipulator and coordinator of symbol systems, an expert on all phases of interrogation, brainwashing, and control. I have not seen Benway since his precipitate departure from Annexia, where his assignment had been TD, total demoralization. Benway's first act was to abolish concentration camps, mass arrest, and except under certain limited and special circumstances, the use of torture. I deplore brutality, he said. It's not efficient. On the other hand, prolonged mistreatment, short of physical violence, gives rise, when skillfully applied, to anxiety and a feeling of special guilt. A few rules or other guiding principles are to be borne in mind. The subject must not realize that the mistreatment is a deliberate attack of an anti-human enemy on his personal identity. He must be made to feel that he deserves any treatment he receives because there is something never specified horribly wrong with him. The naked need of the control addicts must be decently covered by an arbitrary and intricate bureaucracy so that the subject cannot contact his enemy direct. As regards the interrogation of suspects, Spanway has this to say. While in general I avoid the use of torture, torture localizes the opponent and mobilizes resistance. The threat of torture is useful to induce in the subject the appropriate feeling of helplessness and gratitude to the interrogator for withholding it. And torture can be employed to advantage as a penalty when the subject is far enough along with the treatment to accept punishment as deserved. To this end, I devised several forms of disciplinary procedure. One was known as the switchboard. Electric drills that can be turned on at any time are clamped against the subject's teeth, and he is instructed to operate an arbitrary switchboard to put certain connections in certain sockets in response to bells and lights. Every time he makes a mistake, the drills are turned on for 20 seconds. The signals are gradually speeded up beyond his reaction time. Half an hour on the switchboard and the subject breaks down like an overloaded thinking machine. The study of thinking machines teaches us more about the brain than we can learn by introspective methods. Western man is externalizing himself in the form of gadgets. Squatting on old bones and excrement and rusty iron, in a white blaze of heat, a panorama of naked idiots stretches to the horizon. Complete silence. Their speech centers are destroyed, except for the crackle of sparks and the popping of singed flesh as they apply electrodes up and down the spine. White smoke of burning flesh hangs in the motionless air. A group of children have tied an idiot to a post with barbed wire and built a fire between his legs and stand watching with bestial curiosity as the flames lick his thighs. His flesh jerks in the fire with insect agony. I digress, as usual. Pending more precise knowledge of brain electronics, drugs remain an essential tool of the interrogator in his assault on the subject's personal identity. Many subjects are vulnerable to sexual humiliation. Nakedness, stimulation with aphrodisiacs, constant supervision to embarrass subject and prevent relief of masturbation. Erections during sleep automatically turn on an enormous vibrating electric buzzer that throws the subject out of bed into cold water, thus reducing the incidence of wet dreams to a minimum. Kicks to hypnotize a priest and tell him he's about to consummate a hypostatic union with a lamb, then steer a randy old sheep up his ass. After that, the interrogator can gain complete hypnotic control. The subject will come at his whistle, shit on the floor if he but say, "Open sesame." Needless to say, the sex humiliation angle is contraindicated for overt homosexuals. I mean, let's keep our eye on the ball here and remember the old party line. Never know who's listening in. I recall this one kid I conditioned to shit at sight of me. Then I wash his ass and screw him. It was real tasty, and he was a lovely fella, too. And sometimes a subject will burst into boyish tears because he can't keep from ejaculating when you screw him. Well, as you can plainly see, the possibilities are endless, like meandering paths in a great, big, beautiful garden. We are walking down a long, white hall. Benway's voice drifts into my consciousness from no particular place. A disembodied voice that is sometimes loud and clear, sometimes barely audible, like music down a windy street. We must never forget our glorious Simian heritage. Doc Brubeck was party in a second part. A retired abortionist and junk pusher, he was a veterinarian actually, recalled to service during the manpower shortage. Well, Doc had been in the hospital kitchen all morning, goosing the nurses and tanking up on coal gas and Clem. And just before the operation, he sneaked a double shot of nutmeg to nerve himself up. I had a yahe hang over me and in no condition to take any of Braubeck's shit. First thing he comes on with, I should start the incision from the back instead of the front, muttering some garbled nonsense about being sure to cut out the gallbladder and would fuck up the meat. Thought he was on the farm cleaning a chicken. I told him to go put his head back in the oven, whereupon he had the effrontery to push my hand, severing the patient's femoral artery. Blood spurted up and blinded the anesthetist, who ran out through the hall screaming. Brubeck tried to knee me in the groin, and I managed to hamstring him with my scalpel. He crawled about the floor, stabbing at my feet and legs. Violet, that's my baboon assistant, only woman I ever cared a damn about, really wigged. I climbed up on the table and poised myself to jump on Brubeck with both feet and stomp him when the cops rushed in. Well, this rumble in the operating room, this unspeakable occurrence, as the super put it, you might say was the blow-off. The Wolfpack was closing for the kill. A crucifixion, that's the only word for it. Of course, I'd made a few dumb heights here and there, who hasn't? There was the time me and the anesthetist drank up all the ether and the patient came up on us. And I was accused of cutting the cocaine with Saniflush. Violet did it, actually, but to protect her, of course. So the wind-up is we are all drummed out of the industry. Not that Violet was a bona fide croaker. Neither was Braubeck. For that matter, even my own certificate was called in question. But Violet knew more medicine than the Mayo Clinic. She had an extraordinary intuition and a high sense of duty. So there I was, flat on my ass with no certificate. Should I turn to another trade? No, doctoring was in my blood. I managed to keep up my habit performing cut-rate abortions in subway toilets. I even descended to hustling pregnant women in the public streets. It was positively unethical. Then I met a great guy, Placenta Juan, the afterbirth tycoon. From the roof of the RC, we survey a scene of unparalleled horror. A contingent of howling simulpaths swing from chandeliers, balconies, and trees, shitting and pissing on passers-by. A simulpath, the technical name for this disorder escapes me, is a citizen convinced he is an ape or other simian. It is a disorder peculiar to the army, and discharge cures it. Amooks trot along, cutting off heads, faces sweet and remote with a dreamy half-smile. Citizens with incipient bangutot clutch their penises and call on the tourists for help. Arab riders yipe and howl, castrating, disemboweling, throw burning gasoline. Dancing boys strip-tease with intestines. Women stick severed genitals in their cunts, grind, bump, and flick it at the man of their choice. Religious fanatics harangue the crowd from helicopters and rain stone tablets on their heads, inscribed with meaningless messages. Leopard men tear people to pieces with iron claws, coughing and grunting. Quack-Udal Cannibal Society initiates bite off noses and ears. A coprophage calls for a plate, shits on it, and eats the shit, exclaiming, that's my rich substance. Gentle reader, the ugliness of this spectacle buggers description. Who can be a cringing, pissing coward, yet vicious as a purple-assed mandrill, alternating these deplorable conditions like vaudeville skits? Who can shit on a fallen adversary who, dying, eats the shit and screams with joy? Who can hang a weak passive and catch his sperm in mouth like a vicious dog? Gentle reader, I fain would spare you this, but my pen hath its will like the ancient mariner. Oh Christ, what a scene is this! Can tongue or pen accommodate these scandals? A beastly young hooligan has gouged out the eye of his confrere and fucks him in the brain. This brain atrophy already and dries grandmother's cunt. And in Dead Coon County, Arkansas, black as dirt, white as people in the USA, nigger, don't let the sun set on you here. The county coroner comes down with the boo-boos fore and aft. A vigilante committee of neighbors apologetically burned him to death in the courthouse privy when his interesting condition came to light. Now, Clem, just think of yourself as a cow with the aftosa, or a poultron with the foul pest. Don't crowd too close, boys. His intestines are subject to explode in the fire. Rock and roll adolescent hoodlums storm the streets of all nations. They rush into the Louvre and throw acid in the Mona Lisa's face. They open zoos, insane asylums, prisons, burst water mains with air hammers, chop the floor out of passenger plane lavatories, shoot out lighthouses, file elevator cables to one thin wire, turn sewers into the water supply, throw sharks and stingrays, electric eels, and kangaroo into swimming pools. Kangaroo is a small eel-like fish, about 1/4 inch through and 2 inches long, patronizing certain rivers of ill repute in the greater Amazon basin, will dart up your prick or your asshole or a woman's cunt faute de mieux and hold itself there by sharp spines, with precisely what motives is not known, since no one has stepped forward to observe the kangaroo's life cycle in situ. The black meat. Traffickers in the black meat. Flesh of the giant aquatic black centipede, sometimes attaining a length of 6 feet, found in a land of black rocks and iridescent brown lagoons, exhibit paralyzed crustaceans in camouflage pockets of the plaza, visible only to the meat eaters. The meat cafe occupies one side of the plaza, a maze of kitchens, restaurants, sleeping cubicles, perilous iron balconies and basements opening into the underground baths. On stools covered in white satin sit naked mugwumps, sucking translucent colored syrups through alabaster straws. Mugwumps have no liver and nourish themselves exclusively on sweets. Thin purple-blue lips cover a razor-sharp beak of black bone, with which they frequently tear each other to shreds in fights over clients. These creatures secrete an addicting fluid from their erect penises, which prolongs life by slowing metabolism. In fact, all longevity agents have proved addicting an exact ratio to their effectiveness in prolonging life. Addicts of mugwump fluid are known as reptiles. A number of these flow over chairs with their flexible bones and black-pink flesh, a fan of green cartilage covered with hollow rectile hairs through which the reptiles absorb the fluid, sprouts from behind each ear. The fans, which move from time to time, touched by invisible currents, serve also some form of communication known only to reptiles. During the biennial panics, when the raw-peeled dream police storm the city, the mugwumps take refuge in the deepest crevices of the wall, sealing themselves in clay cubicles, and remain for weeks in biostasis. In these days of great terror, the reptiles dart about faster and faster, scream past each other at supersonic speed, their flexible skulls flapping in black winds of insect agony. The dream police disintegrate in globs of rotten ectoplasm, swept away by an old junkie, coughing and spitting in the sick morning. The mugwump man comes with alabaster jars of fluid, and the reptiles get smoothed out. The air is once again still and clear as glycerin. The sailor spotted his reptile. He drifted over and ordered a green syrup. The reptile had a little round disc mouth of brown gristle, expressionless green eyes, almost covered by a thin membrane of eyelid. The sailor waited an hour before the creature picked up his presence. Any eggs for Fats? He asked, his words stirring through the reptile's fan hairs. It took 2 hours for the reptile to raise 3 pink, transparent fingers covered with black fuzz. Several meat-eaters lay in vomit, too weak to move. The black meat is like a tainted cheese, overpoweringly delicious and nauseating, so that the eaters eat and vomit and eat again until they fall exhausted. A painted youth slithered in and seized one of the great black claws, sending the sweet, sick smell curling through the cafe.